So, hi guys, I'm Jamie, otherwise known as Josiah, and I'm going to talk about my experience with Agape on the streets and just what I did out there. And I'm just going to tell you my whole testimony on what led me out there. So God has a special journey for each and every one of us, and it looks different, and it's not something any of us can predict. I just want to acknowledge right now that if you feel like you're too outside of the box to be used by God, I just want to acknowledge that God does have a purpose and a plan for you. If you really do seek it, if you really do want His will, He will put you in the right place. It's a bunch of garbage that all of these Christians want to make us feel like we're just outcasts and we're useless, when Jesus used primarily outcasts in His ministry because those were the ones that were willing to lose everything and to actually follow Jesus. So I just want to acknowledge that thing. My testimony has a little bit to do with that. Agape on the Streets ministry is primarily targeted to this. Getting out of the boxed church and getting out of the algorithm that Western Christianity has given us. With all of that being said, I just want to talk about where I first met Bill. I actually met him in the furry fandom when I was about 19 years old, and I was looking around for Christian furries that were super on fire and to fellowship, and Bill was one of the most on fire spirit-led Christians, especially in the furry fandom, that I was in touch with. So when I first actually met him, I had this vision of me actually going out to like California and going out in the streets and doing ministry with him. And little did I know that was actually going to happen. So it was going to be several years from now. Like I said, I was 19 back then. A lot of things had happened. I started my ministry. I grew out of the fandom, so I just kind of detached myself from it all. I deleted all my apps and everything that I was involved with. So I just continued on doing ministry until one point I actually felt led by the Spirit telling me to go back to my parents. So I did. And then when I went back to my parents, I don't want to say I felt led, because I wouldn't have known it like that at the time, but it seemed like a good choice to actually re-download my Telegram app and connect with some of my old Christian furry friends. And one of the first people I immediately contacted when I downloaded my Telegram app was Bill from Agape on the Streets. He seemed to have been doing a lot of things at all sorts of different places throughout the years of me talking to him. And so when I caught up with him, I realized that's literally like what he's been doing. And he just recently publicly stated that he is kind of in a nomadic lifestyle at this point. And I noticed, I acknowledge that because I noticed that a lot of the Christians that are really being led by the Spirit are doing two specific lifestyles. And those lifestyles is gypsy life and I had to think for a second. The second one is self-sufficiency. And it seems every ministry that I've been involved with that is really hearing the voice of God and seeking His gifts, seeking His fruit, it seems like they're all going to these two primary lifestyles. But in moving on, I reconnected with Bill and I actually got to know his son. And after about a couple of months, Bill and his son called me and they said, "Hey Josiah, we want to tell you that we actually feel led to come invite you to do ministry with us out on the streets out west." And the Spirit instantly hit me, and I knew that this was an open door that God was giving me. And so I was aiming towards this, but of course I was a little hesitant. I mean, I have traveled a bit, but I've never actually been on a plane at this point, and I definitely haven't just left everything to go meet up with people that I never met in person. So this was all a really new step of faith experience for me. So as I said no, I actually started backsliding, but I started to doubt my faith. So I was at this point where I was so devastated and I was crying the deepest cries in my life, guys. Just not knowing, going through existential crisis as well. I was going through a low. Finally, I got desperate enough to say, "God, I don't know why, but you, for some reason, you want me to go to Arizona." So I was finally obedient enough and I said yes. So that was the first lesson I had learned about, following God and being obedient to Him, is not to postpone what He's trying to do. I didn't really understand that God was trying to bless me, bless my life. He was just trying to give me intimacy and show me that He is my Father. And one of the biggest themes, which I'll talk about in the end, is that He has favor over my life. And a lot of us have favor. And we think that being a Christian just means living a broken life. And that, your life's just going to be miserable and everything's going to go bad and you're just going to learn how to love through it. And there is that. I'm not saying there isn't, and I'm not a prosperity preacher. But the fact is, God does raise princes to become kings. And He does raise some people to have a lot of money. Some people have more money than others. And sometimes it's God's will and other times it's not. That's for you to know for yourself. So with all that being said, there's a lot going on. I finally booked a flight and I was only there for just over 2 months. I flew out to Yuma, Arizona on March 31st. And shortly after I landed, Bill came to pick me up. It was the first time I ever saw the desert, first time I ever been out this far west. blessed, and instantly I knew that this was a good chapter, and I knew it was going to kick my butt a little bit, but I knew that there was something here for me, and it was a very mysterious thing. This whole journey was a mysterious thing. And so as I finally get introduced to the whole team at the time, we all just kind of hung out. We took I don't want to say we took like an instant break, but we kind of did chillax for the first bit of me being there. There was a lot of devastating situations going on. If you want to hear about it, Bill makes vlogs about his life and what's been going on for the last, few years or so on his YouTube. Go ahead and subscribe. I will put a card up on the corner of the video right now. So to continue on with what I was saying, I came there, according to the words, at the most perfect timing. There was a lot of battles with hope, and if anyone even cared, kind of going on. And they told me that even just me being willing to go out and help them was already a blessing within themselves. So I didn't really have much. I came there with $200 in my pocket and my guitar, and I knew that this was a season where I was going to be ministered to, but I also was able to be used by God to bless them. So we continue on doing our things together, and a lot of Bill's ministry. The style of ministry is really trying to copy the Book of Acts, and it's not about necessarily setting up this church building where you have church on Sunday mornings and Wednesday nights, and then you have to believe this perfect theology or else there's something wrong with you kind of a thing. And it's not at all about trying to preach this religious hardcore condemnation gospel out there. It's actually just being a friend to others. And so yeah, the vacation season kind of ended for me, and our goal at this point was to get out of Arizona before it got super 130 degrees plus peaks in the summer and go over to California. So for the first half, there was ministry going on. Actually, I think some of the best ministry I did was actually during this season of working and not knowing, how our resources were going to come about. Everything was by faith. We were being provided for in miraculous ways through this whole time. And so of course there were trials and tribulations, and I knew to expect this because I have been in ministry in the past. There's always going to be hardships, and then there's always going to be those times where you kind of doubt, hey, was I really supposed to do this? Was I supposed to go out there? And so during this whole time, during these hardships even, there were stressful moments, but God was faithful throughout everything that was going on. And what literally had a specific favor on us, and for me to realize for myself that he had a favor on me, and I had still been realizing it after I got home, that God just wanted to show me that he loves me, and he wanted to connect me to build up my faith, to build up my spirit. The same thing I frequently notice about Christians all over the world perhaps, but I know all over the United States, is that a lot of people want to go to church on Sunday mornings, but that they don't want to do anything in regards to ministry outside of Sunday morning church. And guys, I know that's a hard thing to do. It's not easy, and sometimes we can't do it by ourselves. Sometimes we don't have the gifts that others do to be able to go out and minister out to certain groups of people or to certain places. No matter how hard it is our most important call. And it is the cry of Jesus Christ that we are called to do that. So even when things weren't easy, when things weren't going smooth, we still did minister to people. Now, I do want to acknowledge, I thought I specifically was going to go on the streets and do more ministry. I did reach out to people, and there's even some footage of it on Bill's YouTube and stuff, when first time I went street performing, and then there was a teenager I reached out to that day, and God just wrecked him as I was just telling him about my testimony and what I went through. But this season, even though there was some hardships and just new things going on, and it felt like I was just being molded into an entirely new shape that I had never been in before, there was a lot of rest for me to just sit back and just to forget everything that I had been doing with my life, to be active in a way that I am not usually active, and to be inactive in the way I usually am active. And also at this point, it's very apparent to me just to acknowledge that it seems like the body of Christ is kind of just let loose, and there's really a lot of struggles to organize things and for people to truly cooperate and do things together as a family in the spirit, united. So once again, it seems like all of these ministries, very few of them actually have any sort of professional abilities because of the lack of contribution that other Christians give them. And so that's one of the things I also faced. By the grace of God, we had a car that didn't break down until later, actually at a good timing where things were able to be taken care of for all of us. We did have friends, we always had a bed to sleep, we always ate, and we were able to take care of each other. Even though sometimes there were some little arguments and stuff. You know, we weren't screaming at each other or anything, but you know, just what it's like when you're like this close to someone. And I was attached to the hip with Bill for almost 2 months, but you know, we were able to actually calm each other down and give each other hope. And things changed later on, but a lot of things were just on the terms of, you know, the entire Ministries plan, you know. And so the first part was getting the couple out to Washington, then getting Bill and I out to California. So if there's anything else I want to say about the Arizona journey, I just want to acknowledge that it's everything I expected in going on a missions trip. You know, a lot of people have these blessed times and everything's just perfect and everything works out together. And I notice when things are even hanging on by a thread, which things hang on by just a thread a lot when you're actually following Jesus, but it always does push through. And of course, I'm in touch with some very great people from Arizona that I still talk to this very day. So going to California now, this is kind of like part 2. California was not something that I expected to be any better, honestly. But Bill kept telling me over and over again, he says, I don't know why, Josiah, but I really have a feeling God's going to bless your socks off. And I was just kind of like, okay, like, we'll see. I mean, we'll see. Well, most of my time in California wasn't actually on the continent. I spent a little bit in LA and Orange County and stuff, but then I spent the next 3 weeks out in Catalina Island, which I know most people outside of the LA area don't even know what Catalina Island is. It's hard to explain. But for the sake of this video, I'm going to try and explain it. So what I explained to Chicagoans what Catalina Island is these people that are, not all of them, but a lot of them tend to be, you know, 6 figures a year or more, because it is LA and that whole area, and California is super expensive. And they just want to get away from like the whole world. They want to get away from politics and the news, and they go to this island where it feels like a spring break island. It's honestly like going to like a local small town block party on a downtown strip at a bar, and there's a garage band playing and everyone's chilling having a beer. And that's the vibe that I try and explain to people and what Catalina Island is. It's that vibe. And so a lot of these people are just having a really chill time on this really mega expensive island where gas is $9.99 a gallon, and if you want to live on it, cheap rent is like $2,500 a month. And so yeah, I did have a blessed time at Catalina Island. There's a lot of Christians I fellowshiped with there. I had a pastor shelter me, and I worked a job in the morning there, and then I was actually doing construction work on a church that had been built at 1889. And so in the middle of all of this, I really sensed that I had to have some alone time now with the Lord. And so here I am on this island. I went away and just chilled out at the ocean. The first time I ever saw the ocean was right now in life. And I'm away just looking, and all of a sudden God is showing me His favor at its fullest. And I remember it just hitting me in a way that I didn't understand. Just as I said prior, that so many Christians believe that this life is just about living miserable. People have this bondage. Christians have this bondage in thinking that your whole life is just going to be miserable if you're a Christian. And it's so not that way. Jesus does want to bless you. And He will do things that are insane. There's no way me, with literally nothing on this really expensive island that costs money just to even get there, and fellowshipping with Christians and being taken out to expensive dinners for free, I finally saw how much God does want to bless me and that I have favor. And the same goes for so many Christians that God wants to bless, yet they deny the favor that they're able to walk into in God's authority. God does want to bless us. He doesn't just create us just to have these inexperienced and non-blessed lives. But there's one thing I want to say about blessings, because there's also a lot of people that are praying for things that they want. But one thing I notice about God's blessings is that when He finally gives you that blessing, it will be given to you in a way that you can honestly take it or leave it. I was at a place where I almost would have even said no. I would have said no to this whole experience hanging out with Bill. And I felt like it wouldn't have been me. It would have just been my flesh. Yet when God opened this door to bless me, it didn't satisfy my flesh so much, as I was humble enough to say, okay, yeah, I'll do that. And that's the mindset that God tends to lead us to when we're about to receive a blessing. So if you want that wife, you want to be that parent, you want to have that job, you want to have that authority in the spirit or that role in ministry, you don't feel the way a fleshly person would feel when he just won the lottery. All of a sudden you have this ecstatic dream of, I'm gonna get all the cars I want, all the mansions. You don't think like that when you're actually stepping into God's blessing. Now, I'm not saying that it was like depressing or anything. I know that there were times when God had blessed me and there was just this childish joy that just lit me up and I was jumping around, and that's definitely, something that we want. We are hoping God will give us things like that, and we expect gifts to be given. We expect ourselves to respond like that when God gives us a gift. But what I realize is it's not always like that. When you're actually mature and ready, when you're ready to get married, when you're ready to take care of a family, when you're ready to step into a calling or a promotion or whatever it is, oftentimes it's like, okay, God, I understand. Thank you. I've been deconstructed of religious indoctrination over and over and over again. I realize it's just one of those moments again where Jesus was just such a bro to his disciples, and he had fun and he just hung out and chilled with them. Of course there was ministry, of course there was hardships, but there were also times where they were just having fun and being family, and that's a part of the ministry experience as well. So I came back home. There was some more awesome stuff that happened with my flight. It got canceled. I met up with a brother in Christ from high school. I didn't even know he was a Christian, but I was stuck in Phoenix. That was a whole other story. That was awesome. When I got home though, I came back with an entirely new mindset. I was a lot more serious into, okay, I'm gonna get a car, I'm gonna get out of my parents, I'm gonna start a career, because I saw that mindset a lot more out in California, out in LA, out in Orange County and Catalina Island, of just people being successful and these Christians that, there's a rightness in that. And even though I already came back to solidify my foundation with my parents earlier, I had more of that. However, I also felt that God was leading me to my next destination soon. So I was getting ready to go to Australia. And I still am getting ready to go to Australia. And I've been arguing with God on this. At first I didn't want to go, and I was like, why would you do this? Why would you take me to this experience where I'm ready to here you are, God, telling me, no, Jamie, you're gonna get ready to go to Australia. Instead, I'm gonna use you out there where it's gonna be the opposite. It's gonna be more of this nomadic self-sufficiency mindset that all the other churches are doing. And I was like, why are you doing this to me? I was really dumbfounded. Well, I think I am postponing that, but not entirely. I realize everything is in God's timing, and I realize these are both aspects that God is calling me to invest my time in. So after all is said and done, I'm so thankful that God wants to give me an adventurous life. He doesn't want me to live a life where I'm just trying to work hard to support myself and make everything logically work, because it's not going to happen like that, guys. He wants to give each and every one of us this adventurous life, and some of us are called to be steady and work the same job for the next 40 years and retire, and others are called to go around the world. And I really sense that even though maybe it's not my number one desire, I realize I think God is leading me to end up going around the world. And it seems my next destination is landing in Brisbane. So with all that being said, I hope this covers my experience. Bill is an amazing person. He has the heart of Jesus. And I'm not here to toot Bill's horn or anything, but he is one of the greatest examples I've seen of someone who is really seeking the way, the heart, and the life of Jesus Christ, to live like him, to deny himself and take up his cross, to follow Jesus, and to love on people, to love on the unlovable. And he reaches out to outcasts, but it doesn't matter who his target is. One of his primary targets is LGBT community, and he was telling me that him and his son were going to go out to Texas to go reach out and minister to the LGBT community, but instead they ended up going back out west and reaching out to the elderly and leading elderly people to the Lord. So with that being said, if this was vague, it's because there's no agenda to Agape on the Streets other than living out normal everyday lives on the streets with agape love. And that's the entire point of Agape on the Streets. Loving the unlovable, reaching out to the outcasts, reaching out to the people that would never step foot in the church because they've already been outcasted and hated by the church. I'm so thankful for God calling me out there. It really still makes no sense to me on how it was just a random trip for me. It was a wandering trip, but yet God did so much in it. and God used me through it all, and He's just showing me how much more He wants to use me more and more and more, and build me up and build us up. And this is how people live by faith, and I believe that is all there is to say. If you like this video, please subscribe. I'm gonna be starting to make more vlogs soon. I'm really sensing God's wanting me to do that. I would love if you shared this video, and I would love if you hit up Agape on the streets. They have told me over and over again that oftentimes it's non-Christians that are actually the ones putting money in their pocket versus Christians. It's not always like that. I'm not here to bash Christians, but that's just the truth of it. Please subscribe to their YouTube channel, and they also have a GoFundMe page. I will link that to you. And with that being said, literally, God bless you. And until next time.